It worked in mice. It worked in mice.
Welcome back to It Worked in Mice, the podcast where we sift through the latest health headlines to find the glimmers of hope and the grains of salt. I'm Piper.
And I'm Alex, and my salt shaker is full today, Piper. I've seen the lineup. We're talking about a miracle breakfast food, plastics in places they really shouldn't be, and zapping your brain better. It's a wild ride.
See? Glimmers of hope. Let's start with breakfast. There's a new study that says just 2 days of eating oatmeal, and pretty much only oatmeal, cut bad cholesterol by 10%. 10%, Alex, in 2 days.
Let me get this straight. The prescription is 2 days of flavorless beige mush? That's not a health plan, that's a punishment. What did these poor study participants do to deserve that?
They volunteered, and they had metabolic syndrome, so they were already at higher risk for things like heart disease and diabetes. It wasn't just the cholesterol either. They also saw modest weight loss and lower blood pressure. And the best part? The cholesterol benefits were still hanging around 6 weeks later.
6 weeks later, they were probably still having flashbacks to the great gruel binge of 2026. So what was the catch? They ate 300 grams of oatmeal a day, which is a lot, and they had to cut their calories in half. So were the benefits from the oatmeal itself or from, starving?
That's the brilliant part. They compared them to a control group that also reduced their calories by the same amount, but didn't eat the oats. The oat group had a much bigger drop in their bad LDL cholesterol, so the oats were doing something special.
Fine, I'll bite. What's the magic in this lumpy porridge?
It seems to be all about the gut. The researchers found the oat diet changed the balance of bacteria in the gut. The theory is that these newly thriving microbes produce substances that have a positive effect on our metabolism. It's not just fiber, it's about feeding the right microscopic friends.
Ah, the gut microbiome. The answer to everything and nothing all at once. So I just have to survive a weekend of boiled oats and my gut will thank me for the next month and a half? It's a tempting offer if you're a 19th century workhouse orphan.
Think of it as a reset. The study even mentioned that this isn't a new idea. Back in the early 1900s, a German doctor used oat-based diets to treat patients with diabetes. We're just rediscovering old wisdom with new science.
Or we're just finding new ways to justify eating bland food. I'm just saying if this ever makes it to my doctor's office, the prescription pad better also include a list of really, really good TV shows to get me through those 48 hours.
I will personally curate a list for you. But it's exciting. A simple, cheap food that can have a measurable impact that quickly. It's accessible. You don't need a fancy prescription. You just need a big pot and a strong will.
And a very low bar for what you consider an exciting weekend. Okay, moving on before I lose my appetite for the rest of the week. What's next on our tour of the human body? Let's go from the gut to, well, everywhere apparently. Microplastics.
Right. This one is a bit more sobering, but the research is so important. A new study found microplastics in nearly all prostate cancer tumors they examined.
Of course they did. At this point, I'm convinced if you look closely enough, you'll find microplastics in my thoughts. Let me guess, the levels were higher than in healthy tissue?
Exactly. The tumor tissue contained about 2.5 times more plastic per gram than the nearby healthy prostate tissue. The study looked at tissue from 10 patients and found plastic in 90% of the tumor samples.
Only 90%? I'm genuinely surprised it wasn't 100. So we're just all walking, talking plastic containers. Fantastic. Do they have any idea if the plastic is, causing the cancer?
That's the million-dollar question, and this study doesn't answer it. It's a classic correlation, not causation situation. They found a link, a very strong one, but they can't say for sure that the plastic particles are a contributing factor to the cancer's development. But finding them concentrated in the tumor tissue is definitely a red flag.
A big red plastic flag. It makes sense, though. We know this stuff is everywhere, in our food packaging, in the air, and the water. It breaks down into these tiny fragments, and then we eat them or breathe them in. The article said they've been found in pretty much every human organ they've looked at.
It's true, and the researchers are really clear that more work is needed. But this is the first study of its kind in a Western country to directly measure these particles in prostate tumors. By identifying that they are there and in higher concentrations, it opens the door for other scientists to investigate the how and why. How do they get there? What are they doing to the cells?
Are they irritating the cells, causing inflammation that could lead to cancer? Are they carrying other harmful chemicals with them? It's a whole can of worms that I'm not sure I want opened. Sometimes I miss the days when the biggest health worry was whether you were eating too much butter.
But we have to open it, Alex. We can't solve a problem if we don't understand it. This kind of research, as unsettling as it is the first step towards figuring out the real risks of all this plastic we're living with, and hopefully finding ways to mitigate them.
Mitigate them? Piper, we're shedding plastic like it's a second skin. The mitigation ship has sailed, circled the globe, and is now lodged in a polar ice cap, which is also full of plastic. You know what? All this talk about tiny plastics and everything is making me thirsty and also deeply suspicious of this water bottle. I'm going to need a second to inspect it for contaminants. Play the jingle.
It worked in mice. Worked in mice. That sounds real nice. Sounds real nice. Will it work for you? Let's find out what's true. It worked in mice.
Did you find any? Are we safe? Don't tell me you're switching to a clay jug. Anyway, while Alex decontaminates his life, let's move on to something that could actually be a game changer for mental health. This is a big one.
I've determined my water bottle is probably fine, for now. Okay, lay it on me. A game changer, you say? The bar is high, Piper. It better not involve eating mush or discovering a new pollutant in my body.
It doesn't. It's about a new approach to a treatment for depression called TMS, or transcranial magnetic stimulation. Normally, it's a huge time commitment. You go to a clinic every weekday for 6 to 8 weeks.
I'm already exhausted. That's a part-time job. A very depressing part-time job, if you're already struggling. That's a massive barrier for people who have jobs or kids or just have trouble getting out of bed.
Precisely, which is why this new study from UCLA is so exciting. They tested an accelerated version. Instead of 1 session a day for 6 weeks, they did 5 sessions a day for just 5 days.
5 sessions a day? That sounds intense. Like cramming for a final exam, but for your brain. Did it work, or did it just give everyone a week-long headache?
It worked! The study found that the patients who did the 5-day intensive treatment experienced a reduction in their depression symptoms that was comparable to the group who did the standard 6-week course. There was no statistically significant difference in the outcomes.
Okay, I have to admit, that's actually pretty impressive. To condense a month and a half of treatment into a single week and get the same result, that could make it accessible to so many more people. What exactly is TMS doing?
It uses magnetic fields to stimulate nerve cells in the brain that are involved in mood control. It's specifically for treatment-resistant depression, meaning it's for people who haven't had success with other methods like medication. And what's also fascinating is that for some patients in the study, the improvement wasn't immediate. They actually saw significant gains in the weeks after the 5-day treatment was over.
So the brain just needed some time to process the reboot. That makes sense. It's not a magic switch, it's nudging the brain's circuits back into a healthier pattern. Thoughtfully, this is one of those times I can actually see the path from the study to the clinic. It doesn't seem that far-fetched.
I knew I'd get you on board with one of these. It's a perfect example of how researchers are thinking not just about effectiveness, but also about the patient's experience. How can we make good treatments better and easier to access? And this seems like a huge step in that direction.
All right, don't get used to it. Let's move on before my optimism gets out of control. What's our final stop today? I see something about diets and brain health. Prepare for another round of dietary whiplash.
It's not whiplash, it's clarification. Researchers are always trying to fine-tune what we know. This new study compared 6 different popular diets to see which one had the strongest link to lowering the risk of cognitive decline as we age.
Let me guess. The answer is eat more vegetables and less junk food. Groundbreaking.
Well, yes, but it's more specific than that. They looked at data from over 150,000 people, and one diet consistently came on top, the DASH diet.
DASH. That's the one for hypertension, right? Dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So what's good for the heart is good for the head. It figures.
Exactly. The DASH diet emphasizes fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and limits sodium, red meat, and sugary drinks. The theory is that it helps the brain by keeping your blood vessels healthy, reducing inflammation, and improving metabolic health, all things that are crucial for brain function. High blood pressure is a major risk factor for cognitive decline, so a diet designed to control it makes a lot of sense.
Sarcastically, but curiously, what were the other diets that DASH beat in this nutritional cage match?
Let's see. They looked at the Alternate Healthy Eating Index, a healthful plant-based diet index, the Planetary Health Diet, and a couple of others. But DASH showed the strongest and most consistent link to both lower subjective cognitive decline, meaning people felt sharper, and better scores on actual cognitive tests.
It's always nice when what you feel matches the data. And they broke it down by food, right? Good foods and bad foods?
They did. They listed, unsurprisingly, vegetables, fish, and even moderate wine consumption were linked to better outcomes. On the flip side, red and processed meats, fried potatoes, and sugary beverages were linked to worse outcomes.
The usual suspects. So the secret to staying sharp is to eat like a fiscally responsible pescatarian living on the Mediterranean coast. Guess the takeaway is that you don't need some exotic, complicated diet. A solid, common-sense approach focused on vascular health seems to be the winner.
That's what the experts in the article said. You don't need a perfect diet, just making consistent, practical shifts in your eating patterns, especially starting in midlife, seems to be what really matters. Small changes, big impact over time.
I can live with that. It's less intimidating than a 2-day oat cleanse anyway. So, today we learned we should all go on a weekend oatmeal bender, get checked for plastic, have our brains zapped on an accelerated schedule, and then follow the DASH diet. I feel healthier already.
Or we learned that simple things like diet can have powerful effects on cholesterol and brain health, and that researchers are finding innovative ways to make mental health treatments more accessible, all while keeping an eye on the environmental factors that might be affecting us. I'm calling that a win.
A win with a side of microplastics. That's it for this week's It Worked in Mice. Check the science, question the headlines, and for goodness sakes, try to eat a vegetable.
And maybe some oatmeal. Bye, everyone.
Sounds real nice. Will it